As someone who works in tech, I understand why people can be wary about wanting to trust something like marriage up to technology, you know? It seemed like more and more people were finding their significant other, their future spouse through dating apps. And so I was like, let me give this a shot.
Now look at us, we're married.
I'm Arun. I grew up in Chicago area, Illinois. Been here my whole life. I grew up in the suburbs. Raised in an Indian American family, and I currently work as a software developer.
And I'm Ancy. I'm actually from Pennsylvania, but when we got married, I moved to Chicago. I'm also from an Indian family. I actually worked with kids with autism, so I was in special behaviors, special needs. Most of my job was dealing with behaviors, and yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I just moved back home and I had joined a new church because my family and I, we go to different churches. I grew up Catholic. Now we go to a Presbyterian church. So, I went to this church and there really wasn't too many people in my age group. And then, there wasn't really a lot of other believers around my age who I had already kind of, either ruled out or we were friends, So I was, I had this desire to get married. I felt ready, but I didn't have anyone to look for, It's so hard these days to find people. And so, I had a couple friends and I'd heard some other stories from people I went to college with who had found other believers through dating apps, not through Holy, but through other apps. And, it seemed like more and more people were finding their significant other, their future spouse through dating apps. And so I was like, well, let me give this a shot, And don't get me wrong, it can still be very hard and it can be really discouraging to be on dating apps at times because it's just, you're not dealing with that face-to-face as much, especially since we were long distance, But I think it works. So
It worked out.
Yeah, it worked out for us. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I had such a desire for marriage. I knew also I was ready. But there wasn't a lot of believers in where I grew up. Especially there wasn't a lot of people in my, church. Even the college I went to, there wasn't a lot of believers. And so for me, it was just, I had this desire and I was like, well, there's no one my age and there's no one who is thinking like me, has that same goal and wanting to glorify God and everything, because that was what we really connected on, where our main thing in our relationship was really in everything that we do, we glorify God. And so I was like, okay, same thing. I actually heard about this app through a friend, and she was recommending it, saying to, see if there's anything out there. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll give it a shot. And, definitely it worked out. We're married. So, it was also the same thing, that wanting and that the desire for marriage was there. And I wanted somebody that really shared that same mission that I did.
Yeah. So it was interesting because we ended up doing long distance, right? But we had both had our range to be more local. So obviously with me being from Illinois and her from Pennsylvania, we matched because of the beyond your preferences setting, which I'm sure that's the Lord working in that, We had our own plans and he said, actually, this is what I have for you. So, I was at a place where, like I had mentioned, I had been on a couple of other dating apps. I had talked to a couple of other people and it just hadn't panned out. And I was in a place where I was feeling tired, I needed a break. And I was going through the process of actually deleting my accounts on every app. So I had deleted my account on 2 previous apps, I had actually not even had Holy installed on my phone anymore at that point, and I reinstalled it so I could delete the account. Funny enough, because that's how like frustrated I was at that moment. And so I reinstalled it, and I saw that Ancy had liked me. And I thought, well, first thing was like, wow, she's beautiful, you know? And I was like, but do I give this a shot? I'm like, I wasn't feeling good. I was tired. I'm like, is this going to turn out like everything else before? But, with Holy, I looked through her profile, and it was, I could see more glimpses of who she was, what her character was like. Obviously, I could know that she was, a Christian. I could see bits of her faith, and so I was like, okay, let me give this a shot. And yeah, like Ancy had mentioned, I could see glimpses of that shared mission we have. And I think one of the things that really stood out about her was I could see her compassion, just as she mentioned how she works with kids with autism and disabilities. That was something that stood out to me immediately. Because you need a lot of compassion to do that. And I still say to her all the time how she's the most compassionate and merciful person I know. So that was a big, green flag right away. And just as we started talking to each other, I quickly discovered just how much she loved Jesus in a way that matched me, because I think that's another difficult thing. Sometimes you can meet someone who is a believer, but just in terms of maturity or in terms of their zeal for the Lord, there's just something that doesn't match well. But I could tell pretty quickly that just by our conversations, it was, we shared that, and that was a huge positive at that point. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like I was in the same place as him where I was also like, yeah, nothing is working. I was talking to people prior. And again, like that, wanting that same desire to like glorify Jesus together was so important to me. And I quickly saw that in just wanting, like, just even like liking your profile. I would say like, I'm a born again believer, and I felt like even from seeing your testimony, I like kind of knew this guy, he has to be a born again believer. And it wasn't until I started talking to you I realized, oh, you are a born again believer. Your testimony definitely that really attracted me, because I felt like he had the same mission as me when it came to community, when it came to sharing the gospel. We come from a family where both of our families don't know the gospel yet. And so we both had that same goal in wanting to share the good news to our family members, to our friends. And that was really important to me. And just from his profile, I could just say he was kind. I mean, I always tell him he has like the kindest eyes. And I felt like in all the pictures, he just looked like a really kind person. But yeah, definitely the mission that we both had and what you shared on your profile was something that I really just wanted, something that I really wanted for my future partner, and as well as it really attracted me to, get to know him. And now look at us, we're married.
When did we start praying together? Pretty early, even before we officially started dating, right? I think maybe a couple weeks into talking, we started praying together every night. I mean, we were on the same page that we didn't want to mess around with each other's feelings, because that's, I mean, no one wants that, right? You're on this app to find your wife, your husband, and every time you mess around with your feelings, you open up your heart to someone else, it hurts, So we felt it was so important for us to walk through this carefully, have peace from the Lord as we pray. And if anything seemed off at any point, that, we needed to address that. And so prayer was so important, inviting others into our relationship, even when doing long distance,
We had mentors.
We had mentors. We were pretty quick with telling our parents about it.
Yeah.
We didn't want to hide that.
Yeah.
Even though it was a little bit scary,
Yeah.
as Nancy mentioned, our parents are not believers, you know.
Born again believers.
Not born again believers, nominal Christians maybe,
Yeah.
and you know we both grew up churched, but
Yeah. I mean, I would also say we wanted to bring this relationship into the light.
Yeah.
And I think you did a really good job in helping me do that because we didn't do anything in secret. Everyone knew, okay, even on our first date, my parents knew I'm going to go meet him. His parents knew. So we wanted our relationship to be completely in the light. We brought people into our relationship. I had mentors. He had people speaking over, you know, our relationship. A lot of prayer, and I keep emphasizing that because definitely in the beginning, I mean, I was even bold and I prayed these prayers where I was like, God, break my heart now if this is not the one for me, because I'd rather just have that happen now than like get so attached and then it just becomes harder. We also were very like, we tried so hard to like not be too close in the beginning. We definitely guarded our hearts because that is so important. I give that advice to a lot of people my age dating as well as like people younger dating, because we don't need to necessarily be, we don't want to be too close, especially if we don't know if this is God's will. And so we were very guarded, protecting each other, ourselves.
Yeah. And with the long distance component, you know,
that's harder too.
That was so hard. It was honestly very hard. It's a huge challenge because there's something so special about seeing someone in person. There is a real connection there. And we can say that now that we've been married and we're finally, you know, I don't think we had spent more than 2 weeks together at any point throughout our dating and engagement. And now we've had 5 months together in person, seeing each other every day. And it's been, you know, it's been wonderful. And so long distance, there is that challenge. And, you know, we did our video calls and texting, obviously. And but I think one of the things, too, is that since we did realize how important that face-to-face communication was, I think, honestly, a couple months into dating, I think we went for like a 1.5 month, no, it was maybe more than 2 month period where we didn't see each other. And things got like, we had some friction, you know, and we realized, okay, we need to see each other. And then we kind of set a rule, and this was just for us, for our relationship, of course, but at least every 2 months or sooner, I needed to fly over, she needed to fly over. We needed to spend some face-to-face time so that, you know, we could continue to get to know each other and continue to be intentional in stepping forward with our relationship and seeing what we would need to do ultimately to date with marriage in mind. You know, what we would always be talking about, you know, what a somewhat realistic timeline would be for us to get married. You know, what were the things that we needed to accomplish, like talking with our parents, any sort of you know, getting their blessing, and finishing school. You know, she was finishing up her master's degree, and so all those things we were working through long distance, which again made it hard. So it was so important for us to still see, like, yes, long distance is hard. You need to see each other in person, but it can still work. You know, and we made up for it by just calling each other a lot. You know. And I actually was a little hesitant about that at first. She wanted to call every day. I was like...
You're okay with
I was okay with like...
Once in a while.
Once in a while. And I quickly realized, you know, if we want to make this work, because in marriage, you know, you're going to be talking every day. Yes, I had my guard up a little bit, but... it's important for us to get to know each other enough so that we can feel confident and feel that peace from the Lord going into marriage. And all the much harder with long distance, because I think it's important to see each other in community, right? How we interact with each other. And with long distance, that's one of the challenges. And so you really have to be careful. I think that's what we felt. So a little bit more time on the phone is kind of important for that purpose, because I wouldn't get to see Ancy in a normal church context as often, or in a small group, or just like in a friend group. So, we have to navigate that maybe a little bit differently than a fully in-person relationship. And so I think just also being very intentional with how we asked questions to each other, and having clear lines of communication, and again, another thing that's very hard over the phone. So
we're grateful that we get to do this in person now.
Yes. But we worked through it. I think I think one of the biggest things with long distance is that we realized the limitations of it, and realized, hey, maybe we're struggling because we're on long distance. And by understanding that, we were able to be more realistic about it.
Especially because we were long distance too. I was just like, I'm never going to see this guy. Like, what are we going to do? But I think definitely, like I said, praying about it, having people in your life that speak into it. I feel like in the beginning, a lot of people were in my life that really encouraged me to do this, as well as even when we approached this relationship, deciding if whether to date, or when you propose, there was a lot of people that was helping us. And that came from initially starting to be on a dating app.
As someone who works in tech, I understand why people can be wary about wanting to trust something like marriage up to technology. It feels less natural. I get that, and I understand a lot of the difficulties as a Christian navigating technology in the world, and how we should approach all of that. But at the same time, technology is something that has come from the creativity that God has blessed us with. And there's so many things that have come that have been a blessing to people through technology. And I don't see why that shouldn't extend to dating apps.